start with this. Well, you might have heard already that Ryan Garcia and the people over there at Golden Boy, they do appear to have settled their differences. You see, not too long ago, there were reports circulating that Ryan was discontent with how his career was being handled, the money that he was making, how the Avery Sparrow situation was handled. You know, Avery Sparrow was supposed to be fighting Ryan Garcia. Apparently, he had some pending charges. Due to those charges, he was unable to fight. And Ryan's fight, you know, they couldn't find a substitute for this guy. So, you know, he ended up not fighting on the card. I mean, we all know about it. And if I didn't touch on the story, if I didn't discuss it earlier, it's mostly because I didn't think it was going to result into anything. That's why I didn't discuss it. That as that news was breaking, I figured Ryan's not going anywhere. They're gonna smooth this over, and you know, he will maintain that relationship with Golden Boy. And it appears that I was right, because here we are. Ryan Garcia has extended his relationship with Golden Boy Promotions in what he describes as one of the most lucrative contracts for a prospect in the history of the sport of boxing. You know, Ryan Garcia, in voicing his discontent, letting it be known that he's unhappy with the situation, or he was over there at Golden Boy, they found reconciliation. They found a resolution. So it goes back to the old saying, you know, the squeaky wheel, it gets the grease. A lot of people ask me what I thought about that situation, who I think was in the right and who I think was in the wrong. And, you know, from where I was sitting, I saw even blame on both sides of it. On Ryan's end of things and on Golden Boy's end of things. You see, as far as Ryan Garcia, the kid's talking like he's a superstar. That's what he's talking like. He's talking like he's a really big name and he is an established marquee fighter. And he's basically talking like this, you know, based on his social media following, that he's got a hefty number of followers via his social media accounts. But, you know, newsflash, having 2-3 million followers on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, you know, you can have that, but unless that translates into big ticket sales or big viewership, it really ain't about shit. You know, social media is a very effective tool in raising a fighter's profile. Public awareness of that fighter, that the general population at least knows of a particular individual. And that's all well and good. They can know of an individual, but until they're buying tickets for the guy's fight, or until it's resulting in big viewership, or in the case of Ryan Garcia and Golden Boy, unless it's resulting in DAZN subscriptions, you know, you still got more work to do. You're not a superstar yet. You've got the makings of a superstar. You're on your way. But you're not there yet, so you've got to curb your enthusiasm when it comes to those demands, because Ryan Garcia is not a world champion. He's not a titleist of any kind. He hasn't had any big fights of any kind. So, I mean, really, how much compensation is required to appease what is a 21-year-old prospect who isn't a titleist and you know, he's got the makings of a superstar, but he's not there yet? You know, how much compensation is required?
Is he being a princess?
In turn, you look at the Golden Boy end of things. What blame can be assigned to them? And, you know, the way they handled that Avery Sparrow situation in the public eye, Eric Gomez in particular, who had to retract some of the statements, at least one of them he made in regards to the situation, you know, there's no reason in the world that should have been handled the way that it was in full view of the public eye. It very much seemed like Eric Gomez was trying to deliberately make Ryan Garcia look bad, given the things that he was saying. And the whole time it's going on, I'm thinking to myself, you know, this is your fighter you're talking about. There's no way you go out there, you make these statements that could make him look bad without implicating yourself, without making yourself look bad in the process, because no matter what you're saying about him, that's your fighter.
From the show, Eric Gomez, the president of Golden Boy Promotions, said that they told Ryan Garcia's camp that Romero Duno would be the guy to replace Avery Sparrow if Sparrow wasn't available. Ryan Garcia, he takes exception to that. I spoke to Garcia about an hour ago. He said he is absolutely willing to fight Romero Duno. He says, I was totally in the dark on the situation with Avery Sparrow. I came to the weigh-in today expecting Sparrow to be there. I was shocked when he wasn't. He said, I was never offered Duno. No one said they had a replacement. No one on my team was offered Duno. That was a total lie. They have offered me peanuts over and over to fight Duno. They found a way to try to make me fight Duno. They wanted this from the start, they being Golden Boy. This is their bleep up, not mine. Make the money work, Garcia told me, and I am ready to fight Duno tomorrow. So Golden Boy right now is exploring other options, but Ryan Garcia made it clear that if the money is increased and the money makes sense, he will fight Romero Duno on Saturday night.
And this is more or less what I'm talking about. That this is not something that needed to happen in full view of the public eye. Those particulars, they didn't necessarily need to be divulged, and what it created was a situation to where both sides are trying to save face because they're giving a different account of events, likely because it reflects poorly
on them.
On them, or at least they think it does. So the two sides, Ryan Garcia and his promotional outfit, they were at odds with each other. But I reiterate, this is something that didn't have to happen in full view of the public eye. It's a pretty run-of-the-mill situation when you think about it. Something happens to an opponent, he can't fight on the night, so you conjure up a substitute. Pretty run-of-the-mill situation, we see it all the time. Yet, in this instance, there was dissension, there was a tumultuous situation. And the fact that it was a tumultuous situation, it made me think, what's going on here? What kind of compensation is Ryan Garcia looking for when it comes to that Duno fight? Because you're not a world champion, you're not a titleist. So what kind of money makes sense? You're saying make the money make sense.
Okay.
But what kind of money makes sense for a guy with no belt who's never been involved in a situation? Ryan Garcia is still a prospect, but that's not how he's talking. It's very easy to look at that and sympathize with the fighter without realizing, hey, maybe he's getting a bit ahead of himself.
A little.
Maybe he's being a bit of a prima donna.
A little.
Because what kind of money makes sense for a prospect? Not a world champion, not a contender. He's not a titleist of any kind. He's not even a interim champion or something like that. What kind of money makes sense for a prospect? And in turn, I think Eric Gomez, he handled the situation poorly because you don't need to divulge that information to the media. You don't. This is your fighter. And if at any time something you do, something you say reflects poorly on your fighter, regardless of whether it's true or not.
And you said it.
If it reflects poorly on your fighter, it reflects poorly on you also, because that's your fighter. You're handling that fighter's career, and this is how you're handling it. You're making him look bad. You're making yourself look bad in the process of that. Because no matter what you say about the guy, no matter what you go to the media and divulge to them, people are going to say, this is how he manages his fighters. This is how people get treated over there at Golden Boy. It reflects poorly on Eric Gomez no matter what. Now, I reiterate, the situation has been smoothed over. Ryan Garcia has maintained and extended his relationship with Golden Boy Promotions. And he is going to be fighting Duno, the Filipino sensation, on the undercard for what is to be the Canelo Alvarez versus Sergey Kovalev fight. Now, moving on, in regards to that fight, we're getting the first visuals of these two guys in close proximity to each other. And for all those people out there who want to convince the boxing community that, Sergey's on the slide, he's no threat to Canelo Alvarez, just get a whiff of the visuals. Look at the size difference between these two guys. Look at them and realize that it's not just size. Sergey Kovalev knows how to move around the ring, knows how to fight behind a jab, and he just so happens to be the much bigger guy in the ring. And you guys, you clowns out there are telling yourselves that this is supposed to be an easy night for Canelo Alvarez? That this is a cherry pick. I'll tell you what I told you before. If he wanted to pick a cherry, he wouldn't have to go up to 175 to do it, let alone square off against a guy with this much size, this much boxing acumen. I'm not trying to convince you that Sergey Kovalev doesn't have weaknesses. All fighters have weaknesses. But in attempting to exploit them, Canelo Alvarez may face some adversity because at the end of the day, Sergey Kovalev's not just the bigger guy. We're not talking about Rocky Fielding here. We're not talking about a guy who's one-dimensional, a guy who's got all this size but he has no intention of using it. We're not talking about a guy who's going to go in there and give up that height, give up that size to trade hooks on the inside. Sergey Kovalev is very capable of fighting a long-distance fight against what is the very much smaller guy and fighting behind his jab. And it's going to be up to Canelo to get within his desired range and land the kind of punches that he wants to land. But whether or not he can, that's where the sizzle is. That's where the adversity lies. Who's going to get to fight their fight? Now, it just so happens that, Canelo Alvarez, he's got some of the best upper body movements and counter-punching in the business. But the intrigue is that he's never used those tools at this weight against this kind of a guy. So, it's a great fucking fight. But, there's a lot of people out there. They are determined to levy criticism towards Canelo, not necessarily because of this fight or because of this opponent choice, so much as they still feel raw about the Golovkin fight. I mean, you can disguise it all you want, but we know that's why you're saying what you're saying. Whereas, look, I still feel that Golovkin won the first fight. The second fight could have went either way, but this is a good fight. This is a good fight. It's a challenging fight. It's a dangerous fight. So, I can't complain about it. There's genuine intrigue associated with this fight because you're not completely sure what's going to happen until the night of the fight. Everybody's saying, yeah, you know, if Canelo goes to Sergey Kovalev's body, that's his best bet. That's his best shot because we all know Sergey doesn't take the best body shot, but that's just it. He's got to get there first. He's got to cross through the line of fire in order to get, you know, to that range and implement that kind of a strategy. And that's where the sizzle is because Sergey's not just going to stand there. He's a guy who knows how to move around the ring and fight behind his jab. He's got one of the best jabs in the business. So, you know, you're not just going to walk through this guy, walk up to this guy without any kind of resistance, without facing any kind of adversity.
No, la verdad que no representa para mí nada ahorita. Realmente no representa para mí nada. Viene de pelear con nadie prácticamente. Va a pelear con un peleador más o menos. No representa para mí ningún reto que no lo haya hecho ya en las dos peleas que ya le gané.
Oscar said you guys are going to fight in 2020. Is that what you
Oscar dice muchas cosas que no tienen sentido.
How is your relationship right now with Golden Boy?
Trabajo. No, siempre hemos trabajado bien y trabajo.
Together and work.
Oscar said you guys are good friends. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
So do you think that you and Golovkin are finished? Business
For me, yes.
I'll tell you something. That was a very revealing interview with Canelo Alvarez ahead of the presser, the first face-off between him and Sergey Kovalev. He was asked a lot of questions. Questions about Gennady Golovkin, questions about things that Oscar De La Hoya said. And for the Spanish-speaking fans out there, the ones that can understand Canelo Alvarez when he's talking, for those of you out there, you'll know
Said a mouthful.
what Canelo Alvarez said, that, you know, Oscar De La Hoya, he says a lot of things that don't mean anything, and he said that in regards to the Triple G rubber match. That, you know, you got Oscar saying that, yeah, it'll happen next year, but that's not what Canelo's saying. What Canelo is saying is that there's nothing left for him to do that he didn't already do in the first two fights. That Golovkin's out here fighting these virtual nobodies, and as far as fighting him for a third time, it doesn't mean anything to him. Not to Canelo.
Story ain't changed.
And this is a window of insight to the future as far as, you know, what happens if Canelo Alvarez beats Sergey Kovalev? Can we then expect him to go back down to middleweight and have that third fight with Gennady Golovkin? Because a lot of people out there are of the opinion, a lot of people feel that a part of Golden Boy striking that deal with DAZN, a big part of it was promising DAZN that third Golovkin fight. I mean, that's why they brought both of these guys on board. You know, they got Canelo, they got Golovkin, you got the recipe, you got the ingredients, so the only thing left to do is to stage the fight. Yet here we see that Canelo Alvarez is vehemently not interested in fighting Golovkin for a third time. So what if he beats Sergey? He goes up there, he beats Sergey, he becomes the WBO champion. I'll reiterate the sentiments I expressed before. I don't think for a second Canelo Alvarez is going to stay in the light heavyweight division if he wins that fight. I wholeheartedly believe, even if he wins that fight, you know, he'll vacate the title, he'll likely drop down to 168, you know, make a gradual descent to a more comfortable weight for him, a weight he's better suited to fight at. And, you know, he's not going to stay up there. But just because he doesn't stay up there doesn't mean he's going to fight Gennady Golovkin thereafter. And his story, it hasn't changed. He still doesn't seem interested in fighting Golovkin. So can we expect the people at DAZN, John Skipper,
all those guys,
you know, can we expect all those people to pressure Canelo after this Kovalev fight? And I dare say yes, because they want that fight. That fight is a big part of their bottom line in the middleweight division. And given what they're paying Canelo, what they're paying Golovkin, you know, both those guys, they stand to make a sizable amount of money, guaranteed, fight by fight. But it's not without consequences. It's not without its requisites. That empowers DAZN to have some say-so in the decision-making process as far as who both of those two guys end up fighting. And they want them to fight each other. I mean, if they're willing to pay that much money to Gennady Golovkin, to Canelo Alvarez, it's because a part of their bottom line is staging that third fight. So after this Kovalev fight, I expect to see a resurgence of that subject as a talking point, as a hot topic. Because this isn't like a pay-per-view situation, you know, to where you take the risk. You know, the promoter, the fighter, they take the risk as far as whether or not the event will be a success and whether or not it'll generate the kind of money that they're looking for. The risk is on them, in all honesty. Whereas in this situation, there are no risks.
Not financially.
The purses are guaranteed to the fighters. They know what they stand to make. It's a sizable amount of money, so there's no risk there. You're getting your money, but you are getting it from DAZN. So that empowers them to be a part of the decision-making process, and it is a different situation. Because, you know, when Canelo first came on board to DAZN,
When he signed that deal.
and news broke of the kind of money that he stood to make as a result of inking that pact with them, entering into that partnership, most of the focus in regards to that story was in regards to what he stood to make, that he had effectively become the top earning guy in the sport of boxing, as if he wasn't already, but also the top earning guy for any organized sport, because it's a massive deal. You know, he stands to make a ridiculous amount of money if all goes to plan. And most of the focus was on that, and not enough attention was being paid to the different intricacies of this kind of a situation, because this isn't a pay-per-view situation. DAZN is willing to guarantee Canelo Alvarez that kind of money because they know that he's good for it, and because they feel that he can boost subscriptions every time he fights, and that might be true.
It is.
But that also empowers them to decide who he fights, to have some say-so in that situation in a way that a pay-per-view situation wouldn't, because in a pay-per-view situation, you can go out there, you can fight Joe Blow. All the risks are on you as to whether or not it sells, whereas in this situation, you're being guaranteed the cash. But they're not guaranteeing you this cash to go over there and do whatever the fuck you want and fight whoever the fuck you want. They have a plan. They have an outline as far as what they want to happen. So I'm expecting that friction that we were seeing a couple of months ago between Canelo and Golden Boy and DAZN, I am expecting that friction to resurface even if Canelo is successful against Sergey Kovalev. Right now, given his demeanor towards the questions asked, it seems like an eventuality, that it's only a matter of time before this resurfaces as opposed to a matter of chance.